Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting bear cub and birch trees, and I'm sipping on some mint tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, chrome orange, chrome yellow, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a couple of fun tools. I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing. I also have a plastic palette or painting knife that has two angles. You could really use any type of flat object for this purpose. We'll be using this for our trees later on down the line. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can always print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a medium warm gray color, and I'll be using that to tone my entire canvas and to give my canvas a base coat. I'll be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to create my custom color, which I have already magically done off camera, and I'll show you how I got there. So this is the gray that I'm going for. How I got to that was a lot of white, a good amount of brown, and a little bit of black. So I want, black and white is going to make gray, and the brown is going to give it a warmish tone to it. I didn't want it to be too cool of a background. This is going to be the base color for my trees and my landscape. So I'm just going for a nice warm tone in through there. So once you've got the color that you desire, you're going to paint the entire canvas with that color. So I'm using my large brush. You can use any brush stroke that you want to get this on here. It is a very well covering type of color, which means you'll most likely be able to get it fully covered in one coat because it has good opacity to it with the amount of white that we put into the equation. And because it covers so well, you can really use just about any brush stroke. You could be using circles, you could be using crisscross. I'm just kind of using either a horizontal or a vertical type of brush stroke. I'm using horizontal, it seems like, in the middle, and vertical on these edges. You can even paint the sides of your canvas. That'll make the whole project look nice and complete, and as if you've paid the same amount of attention to your entire project. And then I just come back into this center here and make sure I have a nice good coverage on the whole thing. So once I've got my whole coverage on here, oops, I picked up a little extra white there. That's okay. We'll just blend it on in here. Once I've got my whole coverage on here, if I'm going to let it dry. And if I feel that I need or want to do a second coat anywhere, I certainly could, but I do know that I'm going to be having a second coat placed on like 95% of the canvas. So I don't really need this layer to be perfect, but if you needed it to be perfect, you could certainly let it dry. And if there was any additional spots that needed to be hit, you certainly could. What I'm doing now is once I get it all on there, I like to just kind of go back and forth. This just levels my paint. So if I had any thick spots, this would kind of bring them nice and level with the thinner spots and vice versa. So it gives me a nice level playing field as my paint dries. And then we're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our trees. I'm going to be using my chalk. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers, and then we'll connect those markers. The only main tree that we want to have kind of in a similar size or position if you are hoping to have your little cute cub in a good place is the first tree that we do, which is going to be the main tree that's in the front. And then all the other trees you can kind of freestyle if you'd like to, or you can follow along with where I put mine. So I'm going to start with my biggest tree that's going to be in the front, and it's going to be kind of diagonal. So I'm going to go up to the top of my canvas. I'm going to find myself about the halfway mark. And then I'm going to come to the right of that about an inch, inch and a half, somewhere in here, make myself a mark. And then I'm going to come over to this right-hand corner of my canvas and go to the left or in about another inch and a half to 2 inches, something like that. Then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of my canvas in the center, right about here, and I'm going to go to the right of that about an inch, inch and a half, give myself a marker, come back to the center, and then I'm going to go to the left about half the distance between the center and the edge. So about a quarter of the way over, somewhere in through here. I'm going to connect this dot to this dot and this dot to this dot. It does not have to be a super straight line. Mine is going to have a little bit of bend or, you know, kind of an organic type of shape in it. These type of trees are traditionally pretty long and slender and pretty straight, but they still have lumps and bumps in them. Some vary with the amount of lumps and bumps they have in them. There's actually different species of this specific type of tree, but you can certainly make yours as lumpy and bumpy or not as you want. It's going to be up to you. So once I've got that in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give myself some trees beside it. So I'm going to have a slender one in through here. This one I'm going to have kind of tucked behind here a little bit, so I'm going to make a mark about halfway between here and here, give myself a little bit of a marker. Then I'm going to come down a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 inches down the tree here, and then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom, come in from the right about an inch and a half, and then maybe another inch and a half to 2 inches here. And then again, just going to connect my dots, something like this, and then do the same thing over for this one. And of course you can make yours which way that you'd like. Then I'm going to put a couple kind of peeking out from behind this tree in through here. So I'm just going to go to the left of here about an inch, give myself a little diagonal line that connects to that. Then I'm going to come to the left of that about 2 inches, and I'm going to just kind of bring this almost straight down till it meets right about here on the tree. So something like this will work. And then I'm going to put another one kind of tucked behind here, so I'm going to go to the left of that about an inch and a half to 2 inches, and I will connect this one, I would say maybe somewhere in this vicinity. So just take it and connect that. Then I also want to do something so we don't get confused with our trees as we're doing the painting process. So what I want you to do also, I meant to do this from the beginning, but we can do it now. I want you to put an X on every tree. So this was a tree here, this is a tree here, this is a tree here, and this is a tree here. And the reason why we're doing this is so when we go to color in the trees versus the background, we won't get confused because they're all the same color. So I'm going to make 2 more trees. These 2 are going to be, I'm going to have one here and then one is going to be a little bit behind it. So I'm going to make all of my markers up top here so I have enough room. I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3 markers like that. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom and I'm going to make 1 marker a little bit up this tree here, and then I'll make another one right about in through here. I'm going to connect these 2 to these 2. So I'm going to take this and just kind of bring this down in this direction, and then this one's going to go down in this direction. I did that on purpose so we didn't make this one too wide and we had enough room over here. Then I'm going to come down here, maybe to about here, connect here to here, and then I'm going to start right about here and connect this, I would say right about in through here. And then connect in through here. I'm going to X off these trees. That's a tree, and that's a tree. And then we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your trees organized, you can put your chalk away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some autumn leaves in our forest. So these are just going to be out of focus, off in the distance, because I want the tree trunks and the bear to be the focal point. So I've got my autumn leaves and foliage that's in the background, just really soft and out of focus. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are orange, yellow, and white. And if I feel I want to get any more darkness or anything, I might use a little bit of brown, but I'll make that call if I need to. And or I could use some of my base gray as well. But in my head right now, I'm just using orange, yellow, and white. So these type of trees typically in autumn, when they start turning their autumn color, they tend to be more on the yellow and orange side as opposed to reddish type of leaves that like a maple tree might have. So that's why I'm steering my out of focus colors in the orange and yellow vicinity to just emulate that. Now, I'm not going to be doing my trees. I'm going to be doing all the spaces that are in between my trees. I'm going to be using a dotting or stippling type of technique to apply the paint, but I know because I'm using a bristle brush and a dotting stippling technique, it's going to be a little bit messy, and I most likely will bump into the edges of my trees. That's okay. I'd rather you bump into the edges of your trees than to actually leave a big gap between the tree and the foliage. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to start with some orange paint on my brush. I'm going to start down at the bottom because I can use some heavier paint thinking that the bottom might be a little bit more in focus than the top. So I've got my orange paint and I'm watching where my X's are so I can make sure that I stay where I need to be staying. So this is not a tree. And this first kind of pass that I make will help me to kind of get my bearings as to what is trees and what is foliage. And I don't need to cover this 100%. I'm using this gray base to allow for a nice kind of soft look behind it. So you can certainly utilize it as well. I'm just kind of coming up a little bit up the canvas right now to get this orange started. Now I'm going to start picking up yellow on my dirty brush to just kind of work a little bit of this yellow kind of color into it. And because I didn't wash my brush, this is allowing for a nice transition. Again, I don't need anything perfect here, just going for something nice and autumn-esque that's going to allow for this pretty out of focus type of look. So the next color combination I'm going to go into without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange and white. Just a teeny tiny touch of white. I don't need much at all. Just going for a little bit of a maybe a little bit more vibrant kind of pocket. You don't have to do rows like I'm doing, but what I'm doing right now is just kind of establishing a color pattern from left to right, and then I can come back in once I've got this on here and I can add more orange on top of the yellow or yellow on top of the orange. So right now I'm just kind of getting laying my thoughts down, I guess, in a way where I don't lose myself in these trees. You can see that I am kind of hitting my my chalk marks again, so I don't have any unpainted area. Now I'm going to pick up, without washing my brush, a tiny bit of yellow and white. So you'll see that now it's going to get a little bit brighter as I'm going towards the top of the trees. And again, I'm just kind of tapping it in and making sure I kind of hit that the edge of that tree, so that way when I go to paint the tree in, I definitely will, it won't look like we were painting around the tree with this foliage stuff. Again, just a little bit of yellow and white on my brush to get some of these leaves up in through here. Keep reloading my brush with yellow and white, and I'm really just using the tip of my brush. So this is one of those steps where you don't have to overload your brush. If you just put a little bit on the tip of your brush, that's going to keep you more in control than if you were to just scoop up a whole bunch of paint and try and mush all of this together and try and get it into a believable type of way. If you've got too much paint on your brush, you might squish it too much into your trees, or you might have it too solid without having it looking like it's got variations in the tones. So I'm not going to miss this spot either. I almost missed it, but making sure that I got that in there. And so that's looking pretty good to me. Now what I would do is just kind of fiddle with it. If I wanted this to look like it's got a little bit more in focus down at the bottom, maybe I use a little bit more yellow and white, and I can pop in these maybe a little bit of tippy tops of some leaves in through here, or a little, bright pop of some sparkly notes of the leaves. So at this point, I would just kind of fiddle with it. Maybe I want more yellow in through here. So it doesn't have to be anything perfect. You're just going for something out of focus. Maybe I want a little area that looks like there's some sunshine popping through. So I put a little bit more white on the equation on my brush. So it looks like maybe there's these pockets of sunshine popping through the out of focus leaves back there. So fiddle with it all you want. You may even fiddle with it after you do your trees later on. Once you've got the trees in and you can see how it all looks next to one another, you can fiddle with it then as well. But we're going to be using our palette knife for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful out of focus forest of birch tree leaves, you can put your large brush away, take out your palette knife, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our birch trees with our palette knife, or painting knife, whatever you'd like to call it. So I already have my trees designated. You could certainly erase your X's at this point. It doesn't matter, you'll most likely paint over them. What I'm going to be doing is I will most likely be using the long side of my tool for the majority of this, but you could certainly use the short side, or if you have a longer knife or tool, you could certainly use a longer one as well. Really, any kind of flat object would work. You could even use like a business card or a credit card or a piece of cardboard. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have the right side of my trees darker and the left side lighter. So I'm going to be taking my knife and I'm going to be putting dark colors on the left-hand side, such as brown, gray, and black. And I'm going to be almost kind of scraping it towards the left in a little bit of a curved type of stroke, because I want to give the illusion that these trees are round. And then I'll do on the left side, I'm going to put a lot of white on the left side and pull it over towards the right. So it'll be on the left and pull it towards the right. So I'm going to start on this tree over here on the right, and I'm just going to work my way to the left. I'm going to put a little bit of brown and black on my tool at the same time. I'm going to kind of skip it along down this edge. And again, you don't need to do a lot because you have a great base already. I think I'm going to move my canvas down here though, so we can get this bottom area. And then what I'm going to do is, I know that these trees can have some really dark marks in them, so you could take this and just kind of pull out a couple of darker areas, something like this. And I'm just kind of taking it and almost kind of scraping it towards this left-hand side with a little bit of an angle if possible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of gray and brown on my brush to just kind of fill in some of these areas where I want to make sure that I've got my chalk kind of almost dissolved all the way, or if there was areas where the tree needed to be expanded because my leaves were a little bit too close, I would definitely put a little bit more into there. So this right now I'm picking up is my gray in order to kind of alleviate some of that chalk mark and just kind of get this to spread out a little bit more over on this side. So now that I've got that in play, now I'm going to, without wiping my tool, I'm just going to pick up white paint on it. So I have, let me just show you what I'm doing here. So I have white paint on it, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing down this left-hand side. So I'm just kind of almost riding my tool down the edge of that tree, and then once I need to reload, I need a little bit more down here, and then I can start kind of pulling it in this direction around the tree. So the idea of using a tool like this is to allow for a kind of a mark or a painting stroke that you can't really create with a brush. This is going to give you a much more organic type of look to it, more like bark, a more natural type of appearance to it. And if you get areas that are brighter and darker, that's the goal here. It's the idea for me to have predominantly this left side a little bit brighter, and it doesn't even have to be white. If I want this one to be a little bit darker than this front tree, I could certainly add a touch of brown to my brush to get this to be a little bit darker, or maybe a little bit more gray on my brush on this left hand side. But that's looking pretty good for me. I've got some of those dark black birch marks. I could add more if I wanted to, but again, you use whatever is in your visual preference. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to reload my brush with black and brown, my tool, and I'm going to do this large tree in here. Now I know that I want some pretty good dark marks on here because it's big. I want there to really see the evidence of the birch tree kind of iconic look to it. So I'm using a bit more black, maybe putting in a couple of fun spots throughout the middle. But again, my goal here is to have this right side a little bit darker than the left side. So I just kind of scrape it down that side and then just kind of do whatever you feel is appropriate in that spot. So if I want a little bit more, darkness in this area, maybe I put a little bit more darkness in there and just kind of maneuver that tool around to give me some marks that I want. So I just put a little bit more up in through here, and I'm going in front of that other tree, and by using just a little bit of a curved type of appearance in we got these two trees merging together here. We'll make sure that we can see the difference between those. Using a little bit of variety for my stroke, I guess is the best way to call this. I'm getting a nice variety. So I'm picking up gray now in order to just kind of finish off this right hand side, and again just kind of putting it on there and pulling it in a semi-curved direction. Again, doesn't have to be fully curved. We've got a great base underneath, which is that gray color. So again, I'm just trying to hide my chalk or get rid of my chalk, make sure that I've got my edges fully executed, and that's looking pretty good to me. So now, without washing my tool, I'm picking up a good amount of white because I have a good amount of area to go on this side, and then I'm just going to kind of ride it down along my chalk on this side. And you'll find, depending on the tool that you're using, you might be really comfortable applying it in a different way that I'm applying, but this is the way that I'm comfortable with applying it with this type of tool. So you can certainly have fun exploring how you're gonna work best with this kind of tool. But again, I'm just really trying to give it a nice natural type of look. So I'm kind of pulling it over towards this right, and in spots maybe just kind of getting it to intermingle with that right hand side wherever I feel is most appropriate to make it look a little bit more natural and less like a less like a painting tool has created. So whatever you have to do to make it satisfy your painterly eye is completely up to you. And maybe the top is, a little lighter or darker. I think I'm going to put a little bit of brown and gray on my brush just to kind of get these two areas to intermingle a little bit in through here, and then maybe a little bit more white on my tool now. And again, feel free to, have fun doing this. I just put more gray on my tool to get the center area to overlap with one another, making sure my big X mark is gone. And the joy of using this kind of tool is, you don't always have control over what's going on the canvas. And this type of tool allows you to kind of have a lot of freedom. And, if something doesn't work out, you can blame it on this funky tool that you're using. But you can always come back and add and subtract. So now I just have my little trees to go. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of black and brown and get a tiny bit on this right hand side. This tree's kind of hidden behind here. So maybe I just kind of sneak in a couple of darker marks in through here. Again, don't need to do much. That tree's pretty wet, so I'm just going to kind of skip along on the dark side of the trees since I have that color on my brush right now. Again, black and brown, and these trees are on the smaller side, so I can kind of knock them out without going into my lighter color. Maybe we'll just kind of do it in an expedited way. So black and brown, just kind of riding down this right side of the tree. And again, I'm trying to be conscious about letting my tree be in front of my foliage. So I continue to kind of just watch the edge, and if there seems to be a spot that looks like it needs to be pulled out a little bit because maybe I didn't put enough foliage in that area, then I'll just make my tree a little bit wider so it looks like it makes a little bit more sense. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to put a tiny bit on this one over in through here, and then I'll hit the left side of these trees with some lightness. And again, just kind of making sure that I've got some nice dark marks so we can make it look like the tree that we want it to. And now I'm going to pick up some white, and I'm going to hit this one in through here. So going right up to that chalk mark like that, and then just pulling it over. And we will have a cute bear in our painting in a little while who will steal the visual show. So as you're going through this, if you're thinking, man, my trees aren't exactly as I had hoped they would be, don't worry, your bear will make up for it. The bear is going to be super cute. It's going to steal the show. So if your trees are not exactly as you had planned them to be, don't worry about it. People are going to be looking more at the cute bear than they're going to be looking at your trees. I'm going to put a touch of brown and gray on my tool right now. And you can certainly, at this point, as you're going through the process, alternate between these four colors, the black, the gray, brown, and white, to accomplish what you're looking for. But I am attempting to get the left side of the trees lighter, so that's why I'm approaching it with the white on the left and then the darker colors towards the right of the tree. But you could certainly, if you want your light source to be on the other side of the trees, you could certainly approach yours in a different process than mine. I think I need a little bit more here because I have leaves. And of course you could also put, if you wanted in focus branches and leaves, you could certainly incorporate those as well. You could have branches and leaves overlapping these trees. So again, that's going to be your call. If you want to take it to that kind of level, feel free to do so. Again, just kind of adding white paint on my tool right now and just sliding it down this left side of the tree, and then again just kind of pulling it over towards that right side. And as I go through this process, again, I am just thinking that these are nice representational trees. I'm having fun painting them in this kind of carefree, painterly type of style with my fun tool, but if you feel that you want them to look more realistic, you can certainly labor over this as much as you want to. I'm putting a little bit of gray on my brush now just to kind of make sure that this white isn't overpowering on this one. So I just kind of reversed it a little bit by adding a little bit more gray onto it. And then I probably let this dry and decide if I want to add or subtract or, you know, put more birch marks, the gray or the black marks. And then once I've got my trees in their final resting place, I am going to be using, I'm going to use my medium brush for the next step. So you can put your tool away if you can ever stop. Put your tool away. I'll probably fiddle with mine just a little bit more here, but we will be using the, I think I said the medium brush for the next step. So you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our bear cub. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The color I'm using is black paint. You could certainly draw this out, but I'm going to be doing some very basic shapes. We're going to be, he's black, so he's got a nice simple kind of silhouette that I can use with my paint and my brush. But if you feel that you'd like to draw it out, feel free to do so. So I'm going to use my medium brush and black paint. And what I'm first going to do is I'm going to draw a line. My cub is going to be hanging on to this tree in through here. So I'm going to find myself about halfway up the tree. So for me, that's about, I would say here, and I'm going to go about 1.5 inches to 2 inches above that. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of a marker on the outside of the tree. And then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of my tree and come up, I would say about 1.5 inches, somewhere in this, well, this is coincidentally right at the marker where my two trees meet. So right about here. And I'm going to connect these with just a line that's going to kind of outline the edge of this tree. So just ride it along the edge of that tree and make it so you can't see any of your background. And it can be a thin line or a thick line, whatever works for you is fine by me. We're going to be creating our bear off of this line in through here. So I've got my line all set. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an oval type of a shape for the head. So I'm going to start at the line in through here, and it's going to kind of come up. It's going to meet right about in through here. I'm going to bring it over here. So this is a little bit, if you take from the tree over, I'm a little bit more than halfway. So this is about halfway. I'm a little bit more to the left in through there. And then I'm going to just kind of pull it around in through here because the bottom part of this oval doesn't really matter because we're going to reshape it later, but just so you have somewhere to kind of work from, I'm going to just bring it in through there. So maybe about 2 inches down that line. And then I can just kind of bring it up like this. This oval shape does not have to be perfect at this point. We are just kind of giving ourselves some markers. I'm going to paint this in with my black paint, and we'll put on some additional shapes in a second here, but let me just get this covered. And again, it doesn't have to be at this point a perfect coverage because we're going to do a second layer on our little bear. This is just giving us the shape of it that we can work from to add the face and the arms and the fur. I'm going to add a couple little ears. So I'm going to have one kind of coming up in this area, in through here, just coloring it in, and I'm going to have one over on this side as well. So something like that will give me my 2 ears. I am also going to have a little sliver of his arm going on the opposite side of the tree. So I'm going to close off a little bit of this gap in through here. So I'm bringing this up a little bit higher. Just wanted to give you that, you know, area where we were doing the oval from to start, as I felt that that was easier. Before I move down into the body, I'm going to fluff out some of the edges of the fur. So I'm going to just take my brush and kind of tap it on the edges of the ears and the head so I can have a ruffled kind of fluffy look to my fur so it doesn't look flat. So this is just a cute little step that will help you to have the fur looking a little bit fluffier and maybe a little bit more like natural fur, as opposed to just painted on kind of silhouette of the bear. And then I'm going to stop right about in through here, because this is where the rest of my body is going to come on. Oops, I got a little bit of black down there. That's okay. So what I'm going to do from this area in through here, I'm going to connect here to about 1.5 inches to 2 inches up this line. So here's the end of my line. I'm going to come up about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, somewhere in this vicinity. And I'm going to connect this marker and this marker. This is going to be the side of the bear and then the butt of the bear. So I'm going to take it from here and I'm going to kind of bring it in a little bit like this. And then I'm going to bump out that butt. It's going to overlap this tree a little bit more than I thought. Something like that. And then I'm going to color in this whole section with black. So again, just black paint. And this oval now doesn't matter. So you can just paint right over that. That was just, again, a guide to get us into the rest of the shape of the head. And I'm just going to paint this whole section with black paint. And once I get it colored in, I'm going to do the same fluffy type of approach to give it a little bit more fluff on the edge. So I'm going to just take my brush and just kind of pull out these little edges of the fur in through here. Again, I'm doing this so it just doesn't look like a straight line. I like to have a lot of my stuff, even if I'm doing fun interpretive type of paintings, I like to give them a little bit of a realistic type of a look to them, so that little bit of fluffing out the fur will feed my painterly eye. And then once I've got that done, I just need the little part of his foot. So this is this last little section down in through here. So I'm going to take this and then just kind of give it a little oval. So this could be the heel, the back part of his foot, just like hanging on, down back part of his leg or something, the knee, or I'm not quite sure the exact part of the bear that this is, but something that the bottom part that's hanging on to the tree on the other side. So something like that. And then we're going to be using our we're going to use this. Oh, we need the paw. We can't forget about the paw. So once you've got the whole, we need a paw coming across here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about 1.5 inches down from here. So somewhere in this vicinity. And then I'm going to come down maybe about another 3 inches down in through here. So this is going to be the arm paw area. And I'm going to have it coming out like this, and I'm just going to give it a couple of bumps. So that's going to be one bump, and then I'll do 4 more bumps, 3 or 4 more bumps. 1, 2, 3. I'll put a 4th one on in through there, and then I'm just going to bring it and meet it with this little line in through here, and then color it in. Now he's got something to hold on. I'm glad I didn't forget that part. Now he's got something to hold on to on the tree. And then of course you can fluff out the little edges on here, just with a little tapping of the tip of the brush. And we are going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the fur on the body and the arm. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, brown, and white. And I don't need to do much because it is a black bear. So really what I'm looking to do is just add a bit of texture to the fur and to get this arm to show as a kind of a 3-dimensional type of arm, as opposed to just it being flat within the whole body. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with brown paint on my brush. I'm using my medium brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out this arm from the head. So I don't want to, I'm going to be starting in through here, but I want to drop this down somewhere in this vicinity because I'm going to have the little face is going to be in through here. So I'm just going to take my brown paint, give myself a little bit of an outline in through here. I know that my brown paint is very transparent, so it will take on the black behind it. So I'm safe to be doing this type of outline with the brown paint because it's just providing me with something that I can visibly see without making it too light. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the underside of the arm. So from here, I'm just going to kind of pull this in this direction. And then I can just kind of tap in this brown in order for me to just be able to see where that full arm is. Now all I need to do is add a little bit of highlight onto the back side of the fur in through here, and then we'll add some highlight onto the paw itself. So I'm going to pick up brown plus a teeny tiny bit of white paint. And when I say teeny tiny bit, you might not even be able to hardly see my white paint that's on the tip of my brush, but I just have a teeny tiny bit. I can always add more. And you can see, even because I have just a teeny tiny bit, you can still really see it. I'm adding these pieces of fur in kind of a down, short brush stroke type of a motion. So that way you can see that it's kind of laying down a little bit. It's not super long fur. And then I'm just going to kind of let myself run out of paint as I go in towards the inside of the animal. I'm watching where my arm is here. I know that I want to keep it pretty dark underneath here, but I'm adding this little bit of lightness on the fur so you can see the texture and the form of this cute little bear. I'm going to add a tiny bit more white so I can see it a little bit better. So again, just a teeny tiny bit of white paint and just kind of tapping it in just a little bit more so we can see it just a little bit better. And I would keep playing with the intensity of the brightness. I like to err on the side of caution as I'm doing this so I don't go too bright too quickly, but as you're doing yours, just let it dry, and if you want to add more brightness, feel free to do so. I'm going to add a teeny tiny bit down on this bottom little foot leg portion in through here. So just a teeny tiny bit, again, just to give it a little bit of texture. And you can certainly, I'm picking up a little bit more brown to bring it in through here, but I feel like I have a little bit too much white on my brush, so I'm washing and drying. Again, don't want to do too much, so just picking up more brown. And again, knowing that this will get a little bit darker as it dries. So that's looking pretty good. I want it to stay dark on the inside here. You can always, right now I'm picking up a touch of black on my brush. I can always use the black to help me transition from the light area into the dark area, which is by that tree. So you can fiddle with that. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the arm. So I'm going to pick up brown plus a teeny tiny bit of white paint, itty bitty bitty bit on my brush. And I want this one to have lightness on the top of the arm so you can see that this is the top side of it and that it's got maybe a little bit of the light from the sun shining on it or whatever the lightness is in this birch forest of sorts. And again, just brown with a little bit of white. As I get towards this paw, I'm going to be putting more of the highlight kind of in the center of the paw so it looks a little bit more voluminous, and it's allowing me to give it a little bit more of a kind of a bumped out type of look. I am concentrating on just making sure that I don't do too much. I really am just looking to give you the appearance of volume without giving the appearance of a different color fur. So I'm using brown and white to help with that story. You could certainly use, if you wanted it to look a little shinier, you could certainly use a little bit of blue in your paint, but I'm just opting to use brown and white, and when I need to, I can pull out the black in order to counteract anything that might have gone too light on me. And then I'm just going to kind of keep building this lightness on these paws so you can really see how puffy that cute little baby paw would be. And I'm not going to put nails on mine. You could certainly, if you wanted to, you could certainly put little bear cub nails on there if you wanted to, but I'm just going for a nice generic type of look to it. So that's looking pretty good to me. I'm thinking I don't need to do much more, maybe a little bit more lightness on the arm and through here. And then I would just let it dry. And if there's any additional highlights or shadows that I want to put on it, I certainly would. But I'm thinking that that might be pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more in this back region in through here. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your body and arm fur on, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the fur on the head. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are brown, orange, yellow, white, and maybe black if I need to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating a custom kind of rusty type of a color that I'll be using to identify where the muzzle of the bear is going to go and maybe a little bit where the eyes are going to go. I'm going to use that same color for an accent within the ears, and then we'll be putting on some fur texture similarly to how we did on the body in order to tell us the form of the head. So I have magically created my little rusty color that I'm going to be using. That's it. This is it right here. How I got to that was I used about equal parts of orange, yellow, and brown, and then just a touch of white in the mix in order to give me this rusty type of a color. These type of bears can have a variety of different tones in their facial hair. They can go kind of more on the yellowy side or more on the orangey side or more on the brown side. So if yours doesn't come out exactly as mine, it's all right. I mean, some of them are even all black in that area. So you can just make a modified color if you want, or use exactly what I'm using. So then what I'm going to do, I don't need to have a lot of paint on my brush, so I just mixed my paint with this brush. So I'm going to just wipe it off on my paper towel, so I just have a little bit in there. I'm going to have, I want my forehead to look really big, so it looks like a baby cub. So I'm going to kind of just give myself a little marker about halfway down that head and tell myself, don't go any farther than here. So that's where that's going to go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give myself a little bit of a muzzle area, a more slender area in through here, and then I'm going to bring it out a little bit for where the eyes are going to go. So I have my custom color. I don't need this to be perfect texture at this point because I'm going to be doing lots of details on top of it, but I am going to be bringing it all the way down into this section in through here. I'll put more details when I do the facial details in a few minutes. This is really just kind of giving me my area where I want the light color to go. And then I'm going to bring it up into this as far as I told myself to go, right about in through here. And then I'm going to give myself some areas where the eyes are going to go. So I'm going to just pull this out towards the right hand side and then towards the left hand side. So something like this. So you're giving yourself almost little dark areas in through here, and then a big light area here, and then a big light area down at the bottom. And you could just tap it in, give yourself, maybe a little bit of texture, but again, doesn't need to be anything fully rendered at this point because you're going to have the details from the eyes and the nose when we get to it. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to use this same color to tap in a little bit in the ears, and you can certainly, the heavier you use the paint, the more you're going to see that color. The thinner you use it, the more it's going to take on the background black color behind it. So if you want it to have various tones in it, you'll just use it, maybe some of the spots are a little bit thicker, maybe some of the spots are a little bit thinner, and that's going to give you various tones within that color. I'm not putting, I'm not over blending it, I'm just kind of tapping it into that ear, maybe giving a little bit of textural information, but without taking away all that black paint. And then maybe a couple spots have a little bit more on them so they look a little bit more of that rusty kind of color. Now I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to put some fur on the head. So again, I want to give a little bit of form, so I'm going to have it kind of lighter up in through here. My light source since the trees are lighter on the left, that tells me the light source is on the left. So I'll have the left side of the head a little bit brighter, and then it'll get a little bit darker as it goes to the right. I know that the fur is going to kind of go in a direction. The fur on the body kind of went down. We're going to have the fur on the head kind of going away from the face. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and just a touch of white. Again, very little bit of white paint on my brush, and I'm going to start to give myself this texture, this textured fur in through here, giving myself just a little bit around that forehead and bringing it all the way to where it meets those ears. And again, brown plus a teeny tiny bit of white paint will add a little bit more brightness in a minute, but this just kind of gets it started. I can put some over here on the right hand side, but I'm going to bring it right to here because that little piece is going to be the arm. So I can just kind of make this just a little bit lighter so the viewer can understand that those are two kind of separate pieces. And if you don't get that kind of detail, it's okay. And then I'm just going to tap in just a little bit of texture of the fur in through here, having it go away from the face like this. And then once I've got it on there, I can start to brighten up the area that I really want to be a little bit brighter, which is going to be in through here. So I'll use my white and my brown, but I'm going to use a little bit more white. You could also, actually, I'm going to pick up my gray paint from my tree. So I didn't say I was going to use that, but I'm picking up my gray paint from my tree, and I'm going to tap in a little bit of that. So that's going to give me an even brighter area to work with. And maybe that gray paint will look a little bit cooler, so it might look a little bit shinier, which will make it look like this is a kind of a clean kind of bear that's got a little bit of shine on its fur. And I'm going to overlap it a little bit into this orangey, rusty kind of area. And then I'm not going to do too much more to this texture. I just want to make sure that I've got a little bit on here so you can see where the brightness is. Picking up just a tiny bit more white on my dirty brush to give me just a little bit more brightness in through here. Again, looking to have this area of the head kind of pop out just a little bit more, and maybe just a little bit as it's coming into this forehead. And then I would let it dry, and if there's anything more that I want to do, I certainly would, but we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our cute little face. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, white, gray, orange, and that rusty color that we created as well. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting my eyes, nose, and mouth in place, and then we're going to work on the little fur details around them, and then we'll come back for some details on those facial features. I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush, and again, I'm using my small brush so we can do some small details. I've got my bear kind of looking a little bit to the side, maybe a little bit tipped. Where I put my facial features, if they don't line up perfectly within this shape that I created, I can always adjust that when I go to do the fur. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of more concerned about placing the eyes in a good spot, and then I can work all the fur details around that. So I'm going to do just a little type of circular oval-ish shape in through here. I like to have my eyes looking when there's fur, I like to have a little bit of naturalness around them. So I like to kind of pull out little corners of them, and then maybe just put little fur kind of details around them. So I'm just kind of wisping in these little bits of black lines around them just to give a bit of information. I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. I'm going to have the other eye maybe tipped a little bit. I'm going to have it somewhere in this vicinity, down in through here, and just try and keep them similar sizes. I'm going to be doing the side of the nose, or like the inside of the eye over and through here. So it's okay if they're a little tipped, but you want them to kind of look like they belong to the same animal. So I'm going to bring just a little bit of this black maybe up in through here, similar to how I did on the other side. And if you do anything and you're like, whoa, that wasn't exactly as I expected, don't worry about it. We can certainly you know, modify it as we go through the painting process. Again, just bringing little dark areas down in through there. And then I'm going to have my nose in this vicinity. So I'm just going to give myself a oval type of a shape in through here, leaving a little bit of space down below for the mouth. So I'm gonna just use black to start, and then we'll add all of our cute little details later. So just an oval type of a shape for the nose, and then I'm gonna put a little line underneath it like this, and then I'm gonna put a downward type of line, curved line for the mouth. And you don't have to do yours as, you know, downward as mine. If you want yours a little happier, you can have, mine's curious. That's the way I'm picturing mine to be. I'm going to soften these edges of the black around the nose, so when I go to add the color, I don't need to, the fur around it, I don't have to worry about firm edges. So just softening that up a little bit. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and work on the fur within this area. So I'm looking to kind of accentuate the muzzle in through here. I'll put a little bit of highlighted fur in through here, and then I'll bring some more of that rusty color over into the side of the muzzle as well as kind of around those eyes. So I'm going to start with a little bit of my rusty color here. So just making sure I've got a good amount on my brush, and then I'm going to start on the muzzle area. I think I had a little bit too much orange on my brush there. There we go. And so I'm going to start on this muzzly area, so you can kind of see how once you start adding a second layer onto it, it begins to get a bit more bright. So even though I'm using the same color I used on that first layer, because I'm adding to it on top of the previous layer, it makes it look brighter because it's now seeing less of that background color underneath it. So it begins to have better coverage as I go through this process. And I'm thickening up where I want the muzzle to kind of pop out to us. Maybe put a little bit extra around these eyes, so it looks like they've got some good color in the fur around the eyes. And I'm just kind of adding little bits and pieces here and there to give myself some more texture around those eyes. Maybe just a little bit underneath them, maybe a little bit underneath in through here. So I try, you know, as I'm going through this, whatever I do on one side, try and emulate a little bit on the other side again, so it looks nice and natural. And if you're in this area and you feel like you want to add any of the other colors, you could certainly go back into the black or the gray or the brown to get these two colors to transition. Like, I feel like I want a little bit of white and brown on my brush right now, just to kind of get this area to transition just a little bit more on this forehead area, so that it looks like they're together and not two separate spots. And I'm going to bring a little bit of this lighter fur. Again, right now I picked up a little bit of brown and white to give myself a little bit of extra fur around the eyes, maybe a little bit on this underside. So again, a little bit on the underside and a little bit up above it. And I love just adding little tiny bits and pieces here and there. Sometimes one piece of fur can make all the difference in the world. So again, still have brown and white on my brush right now. I'm going in for a little bit more of a highlight above this nose. Oops, I need a little bit more white on my brush. A little bit more highlight above this nose, so we can really see the width of that muzzle in through here. My nose is going to end up being pretty gray in a minute, so I'm just bumping into it. And again, I'm just kind of tapping in these little vertical kind of lines. I'm going to now pick up my rust color without washing my brush to get this to blend into these little sides all around the nose in through here. So that's looking pretty good. He's coming to life. He's going to have some twinkle in his eyes pretty soon. Excellent. Oh, he's so cute. Maybe a little bit more of this rust color around the exterior. I feel like I want just a little bit more over and through here. Yeah, there we go. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I am going to finish my nose. I'm picking up some of my gray, and I'm going to create a light spot on the top of my nose in through here. and I'm gonna just kind of bring it down just a little bit down in the middle of the nose. Now I'm picking up a tiny bit of white paint on my brush to give myself a little extra highlight on the top of that nose. Very little bit of paint. I'm even going to kind of pull it around the sides as if we're seeing a little bit of the side of that nose in through here. So just a little bit. And you want it to, you know, if you can see a little of the dark edge of it, that's great. You know, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit so we don't have so the nostrils aren't too big. So just bringing this down just a little bit more. And that's looking cute to me. I'd probably let it dry for a minute, and if there's any adjusting I want to do on that, I might do that. I'm going to give him a little pouty lip with a bit of gray on my brush. I just picked up a little bit of gray, and I'm going to just give him a little kind of a cute pouty lip in through there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my rust color to give just a little bit more, maybe at the bottom side of this nose in through here, maybe orange. I didn't say I was going to use orange. I just picked up orange so we could see maybe the little bottom part of that nose. And I'm just doing it so I can see it a little bit better. Yeah, that works. He's so cute. All right, I'm going to work on the eyes. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put orange on my brush. So washing and dry my brush, I'm going to give just a little sliver of the colored part of the eye with a little bit of orange. So this is going to be right in through here, kind of this bottom left corner in through here. I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. A little bit of orange, bottom left kind of corner in through there. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a little bit of gray and white on my brush, and I'm going to give the little kind of a little white part of the eye in this corner down in the bottom. So just a little gray and white, something like that. Maybe a little extra bit on this little eyelid part. There we go. And same thing over here, just a little gray and white. I'm keeping a space between my orange and this little white area, so that way the colored part of the eye kind of stands out as its own. And now I'm going to put a tiny bit of gray paint on my brush. I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel, picked up a tiny bit of gray paint. I'm going to put a little like shiny part on the eye, just a little bit of gray paint, bringing it across there, and then I might put a little twinkle too in a second. So that's just a little gray, which gives you a little bit of a glossy look to the eye itself. And then just a tiny touch of white paint. Don't go overboard with the white, just a itty bitty tiny dot somewhere in there, a little tiny dot somewhere in there. And then I would just fiddle with it. So I would let mine dry. I might put a little bit more, like I'm picking up a little bit more of my rust. I might put a little bit more around those eyes if I feel like I want a little bit more character, or maybe a little bit more expression. You could certainly bring in a little bit more of those lighter colors, maybe a little bit around here to bump out that bridge a little bit more. So you can just kind of tweak it once you've got it to here, picking up a little bit of black, maybe, you know, bring this corner of the eye up a little bit. So, you know, just once you've got the basics in here, you can sit and fiddle with it as much as you want. Maybe bring this in a little bit more, maybe a little bit more darkness in through here. And then we are going to be using this small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, I'm picking up a little bit more white to put a little more sparkle on my tip of my nose. You can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint, and I'm going to sign mine on the bottom right. So small brush, black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol. Whatever identifying mark you want for your paintings is great, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that, if I can finish my signature, is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself an adorable little bear cub, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.